There have been so many very similar makeup products that have launched recently where it's kind of hard to know which one you should get. So today we've got an old school beauty battle. We're going to be putting them head to head and I will tell you which ones I would recommend out of all the very similar products that have launched recently. All of these products are also sold at Sephora, so I wanted to get this up before the VIB sale, kind of as a continuation of my guide that I posted a few days ago. And speaking of, I'm so excited to say that this video is sponsored by Kohl's. So you probably know that Kohl's has a partnership with Sephora, so you can buy all your beauty needs in stores at Kohl's. But what I don't think a lot of people realize is you can actually stack your rewards when you're buying your beauty products at Kohl's. So you've got your Kohl's rewards plus your Beauty Insider rewards, and then you're getting double the perks. So this is the perfect hack right in time for the Sephora sale to start. Kohl's has their own rewards program on top of this, and you could buy all your products in one. So if you're doing your beauty shopping, you can also do your home, your fashion shopping, whatever it is, all at one retailer. So thank you so much to Kohl's for sponsoring today's video, and let's jump into these beauty battles. We need to start with the newest one. This just came out, and there's been a lot of buzz about it, and I feel like it's maybe a little bit misleading, all right? So it is the new Kosas DreamBeam. So we've got the original formula with the peach cap, and then the new version has this shiny gold cap. The new version is a different shade, so it's actually the same product, but this is the shade Sunlit. But I feel like this is kind of being marketed as another one of those bronzing drops, which don't worry, we've got that comparison in here today too. Bronzing drops are taking over the beauty space, and so this is kind of a similar style of product, but really it's actually just a new shade of this. And as someone with fair skin, I would say if you're around my complexion, I don't think this is going to work for you, to be honest. I'm wearing it today, and I feel like I made it work because I put foundation over top, but it's definitely going to be better suited to someone with more of a medium skin tone, or if you're using this to get the kind of bronzed up effect similar to the D-Bronzi drops or the Glow Recipe one, all the ones we're going to talk about. The original DreamBeam is supposed to be universal because it's not necessarily like a skin tone tint. It has a peach tint to kind of cancel out any cast that you would see. But if you found that this is too light for you, you might enjoy this one instead. So again, I do feel like this is kind of being marketed as another one of those bronzy, glowy serums because those are so popular right now. But really, it's the exact same thing, but a different shade. So I would more so choose based on your skin tone. Again, if you have fair skin, I would stick with this one. Honestly though, if you're even paler than I am, this one might even be a little bit too peachy. I guess that's gonna get us into the bronzing drop conversation. All right, so we've got these new from Glow Recipe. Well, this one's new, this one is old. So the original niacinamide dewdrops have been super viral for a few years now, and this is a wonderful formula for hydrating the skin. I use this actually as a primer more than I do a skincare product, but it's like my holy grail primer. I think I've gone through 3 of these, which is so funny because if you remember, I wasn't a fan of it in the beginning, but that's when I was using it more like skincare. Once I started using it as a base, my opinion completely changed. But they recently released its sister. These are the Hue drops. That's always like such a tongue twister for me, the Hue drops and the Dew drops, but this is supposed to be a relatively similar formula, but it's got the bronzy tint. Everything has the bronzy tint these days. Now, I was expecting these two products to be identical, but this one would have a tint. But there's actually a minor difference between the two formulations. So this one is a lot more dewy. It's a lot more like gel-like. Whereas this doesn't have the same amount of dewy glow to it. The glow that you would get with this is more from the bronzy shade of it. So the texture is even a little bit different and it doesn't feel as hydrating on my skin as this one. So I think between these two, the answer is if you have dry skin and you're looking for the hydration and like the dewy plump look, this is the answer. But I have heard from a lot of subscribers that maybe on your skin type, this one is a little bit too much. You might prefer this one instead. The thing about the tint of this, it's not so bronzy. It's not as bronzy as this one, which we're gonna get into as well. So this is the Drunk Elephant D-Bronzi. This is a mini. I had a full size. I don't like this formula though, so I gave it to my friend. So the D-Bronzi is intended to be mixed into another product and then worn together. So right away, in my eyes, that's kind of a downside, especially considering that this is $3 more expensive than this one and you have to mix this with something else. I have seen people that don't mix it, but in my opinion, it's gonna be a patchy mess if you don't. And even when you do, it still doesn't blend out super well in my opinion. I like that this has a lot more hydration to it. Again, not as much as this one, but more than this one. So I find it blends out better, especially on my dry skin. But if the original D-Bronzi version is your holy grail, I actually don't think you will like this because it's not as pigmented. You're not getting as much of the bronzy like flush to the skin. This has a lot more color payoff. This really shears out. There's not a lot happening there, which is why I think this one works better for me on my fair skin. This one, I think I'm too pale to use, but this one works because it's a lot more adaptable because there's not as much of that bronzy pigment. Also, the undertones are slightly different. The Glow Recipe one has a little bit more of a red base to it, so I think it gives me more of that actual sun-kissed look because it looks as if you're almost slightly burnt from the sun. There's something about a bronzer that's a little bit like terracotta-y red in its base, and that's what this is, so it looks very natural. This one is a little bit more golden, so depending on your preference and undertone, there's a pretty big difference there as well. For fun, we will throw this one in also because again, I think it's offering a similar result, but this one is a sunscreen. If you were to swatch them all side by side, the shades are very different, but I feel like blended out on the skin, at least on my fair skin, they all look relatively similar. If I had to choose a winner here, it would be the Glow Recipe. If I had to rank them, it would go Glow Recipe number 1, Kosas number 2, Drunk Elephant number 3. I feel like these two offer more benefits, and this one for me is a little bit hard to work with. All right, the glow keeps going. Everything has been glowy these days, so we're gonna talk about this, 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 and this. So the original, the one that started it all, the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. Obviously, other glowy primers have existed before, but this was the one that got all the buzz. But I also want to compare it to a few others, the most popular ones being the Be Goldy drops from Drunk Elephant, not to be confused with D-Bronzi, these are the Be Goldy, as well as the Say Super Glowy Gel. And then an underrated one, a very slept on one, is the iconic London Radiance Booster. I wanted to throw this one in as well because I really like this formula and I feel like it needs a little more buzz. So I did swatches of all four, and the first thing you'll notice is that the texture really varies. The iconic London version is a lot thicker. It reminds me more of a foundation texture, and I would actually say it has more of a like foundation-y quality to it because I think it provides the most coverage. The most thin option is the Be Goldy from Drunk Elephant. It is very serum-like. These three are all relatively thin, but the Drunk Elephant one is probably the most serum-like. Now, I find the Drunk Elephant one almost translates a little bit sparkly, okay? You know, if we're ranking the glow here, the least glowy is probably gonna be the iconic London. So I would recommend this one if you don't like to apply anything over top of it. If you wanna wear this just as your base and you're not planning to put foundation or other things over it, I think the iconic London would be the best choice for you. But if you're needing one that kind of shines through, none of these are super duper glowy, so I would say you're probably gonna have the best result if you're putting a very light coverage foundation over top of them. These three I would say are relatively similar. However, the Say one can get a little bit chunky when you're pumping it out. I feel like I have to really smooth it out, whereas these two are a bit more serum-y like in their texture. Let's talk price point because the most expensive one is the Charlotte Tilbury and the least expensive is the Say Glowy Super Gel, and then the iconic London is $1 more. This is $28 and this is $29. So with all that in mind, I tried to give kind of different descriptions depending on your preferences. You can decide which one sounds like it might work for you and which one might not be your vibe. But if I had to choose one, it would be the iconic London one. The way I like to use this, again, is just kind of as a base on its own in lieu of foundation. I think it gives a beautiful glow without being too shimmery where I feel like I look like a disco ball, but it really comes down to preference. But especially considering all the other ones on the market, including the very inexpensive ones that we're not even comparing here, I just feel like you don't need the Charlotte Tilbury one. This is $59, and I feel like these other ones offer a very similar result, but for a fraction of the price. And then again, we're not even factoring in the drugstore options. This has been my favorite eyeshadow palette lately. I have been raving about it, recommending it in so many videos, and I've had a lot of questions about how it compares to this. To this. These are both from Natasha Denona. This is the My Mini Dream, and this is the Mini Glam. When My Mini Dream first launched and I saw the promo photos for it, I was confused because I was like, is that not the same as this? And they're definitely both neutral palettes. They're not colorful by any means, and they are offering pretty similar shades, but I do think there are some minute differences between the two to help differentiate between them and decide which one you should pick up. The biggest difference is that My Mini Dream has 2 shimmers and 3 mattes, and Mini Glam has 3 shimmers and 2 mattes. Personally, I love the mattes, so I kind of like that a little bit better about this. That's a point for this one for me. The other biggest differentiator between them is the undertone. They're both relatively neutral, but Mini Glam almost, you know, when you see them next to each other, it almost has like an olivey quality to it, whereas Mini Retro, or not, oh my gosh, I'm getting myself confused by all her palettes. My Mini Dream, that's this one, My Mini Dream, has a plum undertone to it. It's very subtle. You almost don't notice them until you see them swatched next to one another. That's when it's a little bit more apparent that they are slightly different in undertone. And so depending on your eye color, your skin tone, you might prefer one over the other. I feel like Mini Glam does go a little more glam, as the name would suggest, and I think that's because you have the deeper shimmer than you do in this palette, so that would also be applicable depending on your skin tone, which palette might work a little bit better for you. But I feel like I can get more sultry looks with this, whereas this one, you can take sultry, especially when you're dipping into this deeper brown, but I'm reaching for this one more for day to day, and this is like date night, okay? This is daytime, date night, though you could use both for both, but you know. But they're so similar, you don't necessarily need both unless you're like me and you're obsessed, and I have both, and I use both. But if I had to choose, if you're forcing me to choose, I like Mini Glam a little bit better because I think those purpley plum undertones really make like those green undertones in my eyes pop. All right, these aren't actually that similar in scent, but the packaging looks the same, and these are so popular from Sol de Janeiro. These have been viral forever. Everybody talks about them, but when I decided I was gonna pick up one of these sprays a while ago, I was like, which one do I get? Which one do I get? And I'll start off by saying that's definitely gonna come down to preference. I think you should go smell these in Sephora, but I don't know about you. For me, sniffing perfume in Sephora does nothing for me. I will leave and I'm like, what does that smell like? There are so many scents in the store. You're standing amongst all these other perfumes, and even if you're spraying it on your wrist or on the paper, I still feel like I can't smell them in store. So sometimes I like to spray it, leave, smell it throughout the day, and then decide, which is definitely how I would recommend purchasing any perfume. But I want to talk about these two scents. They're the most popular, and I feel like people are always trying to decide if they should get 68 or 40. So I'll tell you right now, I love 40. 40, 40, 40, 40, I'm obsessed with. 68, I actually wish I didn't buy, but that is preference, again, preference. So 40 is for my vanilla girlies. I'm such a diehard vanilla girl, you know, and I tried to deny it for years. I was like, oh, I don't really like vanilla perfumes. And there are a lot of vanilla perfumes that I think are very poorly executed, that are just giving you straight vanilla, but this one is so well balanced. This reminds me a lot of my #1 favorite perfume, which is the 7 Virtues Vanilla Woods, also at Sephora and Kohl's. This is giving that like plum mixed with vanilla. This, super similar to Cloud, as you probably know, but I don't find myself reaching for this as much as I do my other perfumes that are like a very similar scent profile. I don't know what it is. I think partially because I smell this scent a lot, so maybe it's just less exciting for me because so many brands have like a very, very similar perfume, but I rarely reach for this one. So if you're shopping during the sale and you're planning to pick up one of them, I would reach for 40. Okay, my obsession with brown mascara, you know, and I want to do an updated short about brown mascaras, putting them head to head, sharing the swatches and whatnot. I have one from a while ago, but I want to do an updated one with some newer ones I've tested out. But as we're talking about Sephora and Kohl's products, the 2 most popular browns from that retailer these two right here. So we've got the Tower 28 Make Waves Mascara in Drift, and then the Too Faced Better Than Sex in Chocolate. And I feel like for both of these, I was expecting them to be my answer to my brown mascara hunt. And these are both what I would describe as dark chocolate. And I feel like I'm hunting for milk chocolate when we're talking colors here. So swatch-wise, these are actually very similar shades of brown. So I would say these would be wonderful if you have lighter features and you find that black mascara is just way too harsh and you want something that's softer, but you don't necessarily care if it like fully translates as brown. You'll probably like these. Now, the Too Faced Better Than Sex Chocolate, I find to be a relatively different formula than the black shade from this same line. I find it much more subtle. That's partially because there's just less pigment there, so it doesn't like look as obvious, but I don't find it as dramatic. Whereas the Tower 28 one, I find the black and brown to be pretty similar. I do have a comparison of the black and the brown on my eyes that I can share right here so you can see how this compares to their original black shade. For me, the answer is so obvious, it's like not even a competition. The Tower 28 is the winner. This mascara will like find eyelashes you didn't even think that you had. I wish it was a tubing formula though. I'm just like so obsessed with tubing mascara, and I do get a little bit of smudging with this, but I don't mind it. I can work around that because the results on my lashes are phenomenal, like just like fanned out so long. Every lash is gripped onto, emphasized, but again, just know these both just kind of translate as a slightly less intense black on the eyelashes. They're not giving that super noticeable chocolatey pigment. And I also like that the Tower 28 is so much less expensive than the Too Faced. It's $9 less. It's a pretty clear winner between these two. Let me know if there are any other beauty battles you would like to see my comparison on, especially maybe some more affordable brands. But a huge thank you to Kohl's for sponsoring today's video. Everything I talked about today will be linked in the description box to Kohl's if you're going to be doing any shopping. And I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye.